I'll
Very
go first.
good.
Richard Farrell.
Everybody.
Go ahead, Mario. Sorry.
I'm Mario Saltarelli. I'm CEO and Chief Medical Officer of GABA Therapeutics. I'm a neurologist by training and have been in the pharmaceutical realm of drug development and executive management for the past 25 years in many big pharma companies as well as many small companies.
Richard Farrell. I'm co-founder of GABA Therapeutics and Chief Financial Officer and Chief Operating Officer.
I'd like to thank all of you very much for your attention today, and Marty for the opportunity to be able to present to everyone. We're really excited about GABA Therapeutics and our lead molecule, which is called GRX-917. GRX-917 is a small molecule therapeutic for the treatment of anxiety. And we'll talk a little bit about anxiety in a bit. The interesting thing about GRX-917 is that it is a largely de-risked opportunity that is going to be very quick to market. We're talking about potentially an NDA filing in 3 years. This is very unusual from most clinical candidates and for most pharmaceutical development with regards to low risk and quick to market. But we will show you the rationale for that. The reason it's low risk is because it is very close to another molecule called etifoxine, which is only ever available in France for the most part, only approved in France. And it had a remarkable and has a remarkable profile. And we'll talk about how the founders looked at that, identified that, and figured out a way to be able to bring this molecule to the rest of the world. The safety and efficacy profile is quite superior to any other anxiety medication. It has the best efficacy, gold standard efficacy as we call it, which is equivalent to the top line benzodiazepines. But unlike the benzodiazepines, GRX-917 does not have the safety liability. It is not abused. It will not be abused. It will not be scheduled. It does not make you sleepy or tired or somnolent. And so for those reasons, this will be a superior medication once it's on the market. We also have a huge amount of data regarding the lookalike molecule, etifoxine, and that really is what is based on our statements of substantial de-risking of this overall program. We mentioned we'll be starting phase 2-3 trials quite soon with targeted approval in 2026. And so I'll move on there. I mentioned anxiety is a huge unmet medical need in the United States and globally. It is the most common mental health disorder in the US. There are more than 40 million patients just in the US that have a diagnosed anxiety disorder. And interestingly, and speaking to the unmet medical need, about 50% of those patients are currently diagnosed, but not treated. And the reason they're not treated is because the efficacy of the current agents is lacking, takes too long to come on board, insufficient, but most importantly, the side effects associated with the two major classes of drugs is unacceptable. And people would actually rather have anxiety than the side effects associated with these drugs. That's why 40% of diagnosed patients are not utilizing this. Obviously, societal costs are great if you have people who are pathologically anxious and it's affecting their lives, their productivity, huge amount of societal cost. So moving on, the solution really is GRX-917. And I'm speaking to you as a physician and as a drug developer who's been in neuropsychiatric development for more than 25 years. I can tell you that I can confidently say, on the basis of the data that exists already for GRX-917 and the close analog, the profile of this drug is as such. This is the differentiated profile. It has a very rapid onset of action. The efficacy is as high as it gets. It's comparable to benzodiazepines. So it's best in class, gold standard efficacy for onset and for efficacy. But most importantly and most differentiating is the fact that the side effects are minimal to none. And we can say this with confidence based on the studies that we've already conducted in humans with GRX-917, but also on the basis of a very, very large data set of data that exists in the outside world with the close analog drug, which has been available for more than 40 years in France and a handful of other countries. The side effect profile of that drug is basically placebo-like, minimal side effects. It does not have any abuse liability, and the drug is not scheduled anywhere. So compare and contrast this to benzodiazepines, which have a huge public health problem with them, besides the fact that they really can't be used. Here's the two major classes in comparison on these three key attributes. And so there's a class called the serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or the serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. And if you look in that first line thing under SSRIs, SNRIs, the big problem with these drugs is that they take quite a long time to come on board and to work, 4 to 8 weeks. If you go into a doctor, he diagnoses you with anxiety, and you have to wait 8 weeks for an effect, you probably won't wait that long. The efficacy is also kind of middling. Even when you get up to maximal efficacy, it can be not adequate, especially with regards to other drug classes. And the side effects are significant, particularly for younger people. So I'm talking about reproductively active people in middle age and younger ages who have significant side effects, primarily sexual side effects associated with the use of these drugs. And they will stop using these typically before the efficacy even appears. Just not worth it. The benzodiazepines are the other big class. And as you can see on the far right, they're great in terms of efficacy, rapid onset, very high efficacy. The problem is that the side effects are so severe with regards to somnolence, problems with cognition, that they cannot use the drug, even for the few weeks that it typically is used for. And so they typically will drop these very quickly, even though they work, because the side effects actually outweigh the benefit. And so we have GRX-917. Its profile, as you can see here in all green, is superior and will be superior to all available therapies that are currently available. So we think this has an opportunity to upend the treatment paradigm for anxiety. Next slide, please. So why can we be so confident about data that has not yet been generated? Because we're ready to enter phase 2-3 studies. How is it that I can be here arguing that this efficacy will have this profile? And that is because the drug of etifoxine, which is available in France, is essentially identical to GRX-917, except that it actually has a 20-year patent, composition of matter globally, in all these countries where etifoxine has never been available. And so this was the founder's vision, was how do we take a drug that we know is great, that we know has a differentiated profile, that we know can completely change the treatment paradigm, and then make a financial argument for spending a lot of dollars, a lot of investors' dollars to be able to bring it to the market globally. And that is simply because it can be patented. So that's the rationale. We have global IP protection for this molecule in more than 90% of the world anxiety market. And there will be no competition for this molecule anywhere, not by GRX-917, not by etifoxine, until at least 2043, with the exception of France. Most importantly, they have the same clinical efficacy, same safety. One of many investors told us, this is a direct quote, we know GRX-917 works. And so when you look at the data, when you look at what's available, I'll show you in the next slide, there's a wealth of data that's publicly available. You can go on Google and you can find all these studies that shows that this drug works in anxiety. And so these are all major clinical trials. The top batch here of trials, the first 5 were part of the original registration program for etifoxine. And the remaining studies here are trials that have been published in literature, all of them major. And all these trials were conducted in a double-blind, controlled manner. And basically, they all show that they have efficacy that's as good or better than benzodiazepines that were used as comparators in these studies.
Mario, a quick question.
Sure.
Yeah, I wrote the chat to you, but do you have, is this a licensed molecule or is this its own molecule, or, and what about the ability of other people to license the French molecule?
Yeah, I mean, no one needs to license the French molecule because it's been off patent since the 1980s. Our molecule is wholly owned by GABA Therapeutics, Inc., and we are developing it, with obviously the help of our investor friends and the finances to be able to do that.
Okay, got it. Okay, thanks.
Very good. And then I think the only last thing is that since etifoxine itself has been around for so long, etifoxine has been evaluated by various regulatory agencies, primarily the French regulatory agency and then the European regulatory agency. And they have, on multiple occasions, reiterated it's a safe drug, it works, and it has remained on the market since it was first launched in 1979 with a remarkably favorable safety profile in tens of millions of patients that have received it, and all of this published clinical data, and in what they call pharmacovigilance assessments that have confirmed the safety of the drug. So it remains on the market. It is well used in France, the only place where it was approved, but it cannot be actually transferred anywhere else, with the exception of actually France, actually. And so that's the basis for our statements that not only does GRX-917 have a very solid issued IP estate, but that there won't even be any generic competition from the generic because it was never launched in the US or Europe or the rest of Europe, and it cannot be turned into a generic there at this point. Just not possible. It would have to be fully developed anywhere. So you might wonder, are there other examples of these kind of very similar molecules that are called deuterated products? And the answer is yes. And these have all been highly successful products that big pharma companies, time and time again, have gone after, have developed, and have marketed, and have paid substantial money to be able to acquire them from much smaller companies. So if you look at the top, here's a list of the current deuterated products that we know are available. Teva has a drug called Austedo, which is approved for tardive dyskinesia. It's right now running at about $1 billion annualized sales in a much smaller indication. There's a very hot new drug called a TYK2 inhibitor, which is also deuterated. Vertex has their major CF product, which is now an $8 billion franchise. Which has more than $2 billion in sales right now. It's a deuterated molecule. And Concert, which recently got purchased by Sun Pharma, has a deuterated form of ruxolitinib, which was the first version of the so-called JAK inhibitor, Janus kinase inhibitors, which is ready to go to NDA right now for alopecia areata. And then there's been a number of acquisitions by big pharma companies as shown on the bottom. But, this is an established pathway. This is not, something that no one else has done, and there's a lot of question. The patents that have been issued for these molecules are rock solid, and they've never been overturned. So there's no question about the IP estate. So GABA has a relatively short history. We were founded in 2019 with a Series A investment by Atai Life Sciences, who is a major psychotherapeutics drug developer company. They provided us with an investment in the company. And that investment, which is relatively small for a Series A, managed to bring the company from a preclinical stage company in 2019, all the way to now, where we've completed all of our phase 1 work, a fairly major program, confirmed the safety profile of GRX-917, and even identified a biomarker in humans, in brain, that confirm that the drug is actually working, it's binding to its target, and is actually having activity that has been closely associated with many classes of drug that work in anxiety. So we almost have the efficacy signal as well, even though we haven't actually started our true proof of concept studies right now. And this is because we know the drug works, the drug does work. There's all this data with the very close analog etifoxine. And so, you know, on a relatively small amount of money, we've brought the molecule through preclinical work, through the very expensive toxicology, succeeded in locking down the patents globally, added a second program that the company is moving forward that's also in the GABA sphere, completed a major phase 1 program, and are ready to start clinical trials at the beginning of next year. And those clinical trials are not just any clinical trials. On the basis of the very good safety and efficacy data of etifoxine, we're designing those to be potentially pivotal clinical trials, as demonstrated here, so that we'll be able to go with this one major trial. It's a fairly complicated design. Happy to talk to you about it. A lot of rationale for it. FDA has accepted these time and time again. And so we think that by simply conducting one or possibly two of these trials, that we will have the entire package that is needed to be able to get us to an NDA filing in 2026. So relatively quick turnaround, 3 years for an NDA filing, which actually has a better likelihood of success than any other similarly staged molecule. I would argue this is completely an execution play right now. There should be, you know, except for the usual risks of running any clinical trial, no risk that this thing is not going to work because we already know it works, and no risk that the safety profile we've already demonstrated will alter in the clinical trials. And this is all because of the strong and substantial data set, which is both published data as well as use data for 40 years and tens of millions of patients in France. Next slide, please. So here's how we're thinking about capital requirements. So, you know, we ran a phase 1 program, brought the program into humans very successfully for a small amount of money. We think actually on the basis of some fairly detailed analyses that we can do a similar drug development program all the way out to NDA with a similarly, I would say, cost-conscious and lean development kind of program. So the program that we have, which is a base stripped-down program using a relatively virtual company, will be able to bring us through actually our data with $50 million. That's through the end of 2024. And then, you know, we're planning to use an IPO for additional proceeds to be able to get us all the way through to NDA and to be able to launch additional work that is not actually shown here. So we're really kind of looking for $50 million to get us to getting ready to start the filing process and getting us almost all the way to an NDA filing. Next slide, please. Well, that's it. So thank you all for your attention. We'd love to talk to you more about this. Richard will actually be at the mixer this evening and will be available to be able to speak with you regarding additional questions. But if we have time, happy to answer any additional questions now.
Sure. So you're raising 50 million, and what's the valuation? What's the pre-money?
So we haven't actually set that yet. We've started receiving term sheets from preeminent life science venture capital firms. And we were recently approached by JP Morgan, who wants to take the company public. And so we're really at that stage right now where we're determining the Series B structure and pre-money and so on. So,
And what's the distribution model again?
in terms of
How are you going to distribute the product? It goes directly to pharmacists or organizations or what?
Yeah, so you know, this is a traditional therapeutic development program like you see in every pharma and every biotech. It's small molecule, so it's going to be easier, it's going to be cheaper. We do envision that because this is a large market, that by the time we get to market, we will have a large pharma partner or acquisition by a large pharma company that can effectively not only distribute, but can develop and distribute the drug globally and can be able to maximize the multi-billion-dollar revenue potential that we've calculated.
Do you have any comparables from other companies that have done something like what you're doing?
Yeah, we have a full market research package, which we could share. It was performed by Foster Rosenblatt. They've been aligned with the company since 2019. And they've got all the analyses with comparables, forecast valuation analyses, and so on. They've also done payer outreach, and they interviewed the high prescribers in France to learn that they prescribe this to 50% of their patients at the beginning. So we could share a full market research package.
And if you wanted to look at analogs that are, currently out there that are in the neuropsych space, you might look at Karuna Pharmaceuticals, Cerevel, as well as Sage Pharmaceuticals. And so, their market caps are consistent with valuations here for this company, and you can kind of look back and see what they did. But these are companies that you could argue have products that are actually inferior because of limited market size and in different indications, and with a much worse side effect profile than we have. But those are good analogs, and I would be happy to discuss kind of the similarities and differences between those companies.
Fantastic. I'm just waiting for Fred Nassen to promote himself to a panelist here. And once he does that, we can get started with Fred's presentation. Any other parting thoughts we should think about with your firm? And you're based where, in LA or in California?
We're in Newport Beach, but as Mario said, we're a virtual company. We've got people in Sydney, in London, and New York, Irvine, San Francisco. We ran our both phase 1 trials in Melbourne, Australia, for the 48.5% tax rebate. So we're virtual.
I think the parting thoughts, Marty, additionally would be that this is a unique opportunity for investment. It's worth a look. And the reason it's unique is because there is no other getting ready to enter phase 2-3 program that already has the data that says what the molecule will demonstrate. And so because of that, the risk profile of this is substantially lower than any other molecule that is currently in development. And that is all based on the existing data. And so, this is of great interest to big pharma companies for acquisition.
Fantastic. And is it the same dosage for every patient, or it changes patient by patient? I mean, I'm just wondering about the efficacy of different dosages, et cetera. Have you figured that out already?
We already know what the dose is, and that's all based on etifoxine. And it turns out that our deuterated form is actually a much better molecule than etifoxine. Instead of needing to be dosed 3 times a day, it can be dosed once daily. And it also can be dosed at an overall lower milligram per day dosage because it's a much better molecule. It's not metabolized and eaten up as much by the body when it goes in.
And I have a question from the audience.
For your anxiety drug, the top 3 sellers right now, what is their sales per year of the 3 top sellers of a drug that is treating anxiety?
Do you want me to go,
We have
Mario?
that in our market, but they're all generic at this point. There are no branded drugs right now for treatment of any anxiety disorder.
And the sales, approximately, what are they selling a year? How much?
I can throw something out, Mario. I believe there's 285 million SSRIs sold each year and 85 million benzos. The exact sales revenue, we'd have to go back to our market research and have a look.
Thank you.
They're all generic, and we've already done calculations on the top 4 anxiety indications for GRX-917, and we're projecting just in US approximately 4 billion peak sales.
So at 285 million, that was domestic US, right?
Correct. That's prescriptions.
And you're filing global patents.
We have approved global patents. Correct.
Fantastic. Excellent.